Before you dive into Elias's shocking discovery, make sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. 6 years later, the tycoon looked at the 5-year-old boy beside his ex-wife and froze. The polished black Range Rover sliced through the quiet Vermont afternoon, its tinted glass reflecting the vibrant autumn foliage like a mirror. Elias Thorne, a titan of Wall Street at 35, was back in the small town he'd sworn he'd left behind forever. But the corporate acquisition was just a pretense. His world of billion-dollar deals and perfect fiancées shattered the instant he saw her. Clara Jensen, the woman he'd destroyed 6 years ago. Yet, it was the boy, no older than 5, with Elias's own intense green eyes and defiant chin, clutching Clara's hand inside the Sweet Spot ice cream parlor that delivered the real, devastating blow. Elias hadn't just walked away from a broken heart. He had abandoned a son whose very existence he was only now discovering. The sleek, dark vehicle snaked down the winding road leading to Willow Creek, Vermont, the late afternoon sun glinting off its flawless paintwork. Elias adjusted his sunglasses, gripping the leather-wrapped steering wheel tighter than necessary. 15 years of building an empire in New York City, forging his name among the business titans. And now, at 30, he was forced to return to the town he'd vowed never to step foot in again. The GPS announced he was only 5 miles from his destination, but every yard traveled felt like it dragged with it a whirlwind of memories he had meticulously sealed away. The centuries-old maple trees flanking the road seemed identical to those of his youth, silent sentinels attesting to his reluctant return. "Mr. Thorne, the meeting with the Board of Ascent Systems has been confirmed for 9:00 a.m. tomorrow." The voice of Sarah, his personal assistant, echoed through the car's Bluetooth system, crisp and professional as always. "Thank you, Sarah. Prepare the acquisition documents and ensure the lawyers are on standby." Elias responded with a dry, distant tone, the voice he had adopted over the years, devoid of personal emotion. The truth was that the acquisition of Ascent Systems was merely a facade, a corporate excuse. The real reason for his return lay in the will of his grandmother, Eleanor Thorne, who had passed away barely a month ago. As a final wish, the matriarch had stipulated that Elias must remain in Willow Creek for at least 3 months to receive his inheritance, a considerable fortune even by his standards. The town center appeared on the horizon, virtually unchanged by the passage of time. The same cobblestone central square, the same white church with its imposing steeple that had always seemed too grand for such a small place, the same well-preserved old shops selling vintage items. It was as if time had stopped, preserving every memory he had tried to erase tooth and nail. Elias parked the car in front of the Willowbrook Inn, the only establishment in town that could be considered luxurious, a relic of better times. Before he could step out, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Isabel, his fiancée. "Darling, don't forget our engagement dinner next month. The guest list needs to be finalized. I miss you, my love." He pocketed the phone without replying. Isabel represented everything he had achieved in New York: refinement, status, impeccable business connections. A perfect marriage on paper, but one that had recently led him to question his choices, to feel an emptiness that even his success couldn't fill. The inn manager greeted him with exaggerated deference, clearly informed of his new guest's identity. Elias was escorted to the presidential suite, where his luggage already awaited, meticulously placed. From the window, he had a privileged view of the town he once called home. He decided to take a walk to familiarize himself with the area, or perhaps to challenge the ghosts of his past. Dressed in an impeccable Italian suit that contrasted with Willow Creek's relaxed provincial atmosphere, he strolled down the main street. Some familiar faces watched him curiously, the town gossip already in full swing, but no one dared approach. His cold, closed expression deterred any attempt at familiarity. It was while passing by the Sweet Spot ice cream parlor that his world screeched to a halt. Through the glass, fogged by the sweet, cold air, he saw Clara Jensen, as beautiful as she was in his most painful memories. Her dark brown hair still fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her smile, that smile that had haunted him on countless lonely nights, was the same, capable of lighting up a gloomy day. But that wasn't what made his heart lurch. Beside her, holding her hand, was a boy of about 5. A boy with the same intense green eyes and the same determined chin that Elias saw in the mirror every morning. Time seemed to freeze. Clara looked up and saw him. The smile vanished from her lips, replaced by an expression of shock and something deeper, something he hadn't seen in years. Fear. The boy, oblivious to the sudden tension enveloping his mother, tugged on her hand, excitedly pointing at the ice cream flavors displayed on the counter. Elias felt his legs weaken. All the walls he had built over the years, all the coldness he had cultivated, all the control that defined his existence, crumbled in an instant. Questions erupted in his mind like uncontrolled fireworks. Why had she never said anything? How could she hide something so monumental? Without thinking, he took a step toward the parlor door. Clara quickly swept the boy into her arms and hurried toward the back of the shop. By the time Elias finally entered, they had disappeared through the staff door. A young employee approached, smiling with an innocence that contrasted with his torment. "Can I help you, sir?" Elias stared fixedly at the door through which Clara had fled, his world spinning in a whirlwind of long-suppressed emotions. "No," he replied automatically, his voice a barely audible murmur. "No, you can't." He left the ice cream parlor as if in a trance, his mind replaying the image of the boy over and over. 6 years after leaving Willow Creek, he discovered that he hadn't just fled a broken heart. He had abandoned a son whose existence he didn't even know. That night, alone in his luxurious suite, Elias Thorne, the ruthless CEO who had built an empire from scratch, cried for the first time in years. The 3 months he was required to spend in Willow Creek had just taken on an entirely new meaning, and he knew his life would never be the same. The night dragged on like an eternity for Elias. Sitting on his suite's balcony, with an untouched glass of whiskey before him, he allowed himself, for the first time in years, to plunge into the memories he had worked so hard to suppress. Summer 2018. The air filled with the sweet scent of blooming magnolias when he met Clara at the municipal library, where she worked restoring antique books. He could still see her clearly, balancing atop a ladder, trying to reach a dusty volume, her brown hair carelessly gathered in a loose bun with stray strands escaping. "Need help?" he asked, and when she turned, smiling with a mix of surprise and charm, something inside him changed forever. His phone vibrated, pulling him back to the present. It was Isabel again. "Elias, darling, 2 unanswered messages now. Is everything all right? I'm a little worried." He slid the phone aside, unable to deal with the reality of his engagement right now. How could he explain to Isabel that he had just discovered he had a son? How could he justify that the entire future they had planned together could collapse in an instant? The next morning arrived without him having slept a wink. By 8:45 a.m., he was immaculately dressed for the meeting at Ascent Systems, but his mind was miles away from any corporate acquisition. Mr. Thorne, his assistant Sarah, intercepted him in the hotel lobby, a stack of documents in her hands. "I've brought the revised documents and—" "Cancel the meeting," he interrupted curtly, his voice sharp. "But sir, the shareholders—" "Reschedule it for next week." His voice allowed no argument. Without waiting for a response, Elias headed to his grandmother's house, now his inheritance. The Victorian mansion remained majestic, though slightly neglected, its stone facades and imposing windows speaking of a rich and complex history. In the back garden, he found Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper who had served his family for decades, her small figure and strict bun, a constant presence in his childhood landscape. "I knew you'd come back," the old woman said, with an enigmatic smile, her wrinkled hands busy with the roses his grandmother loved so much. "Eleanor always said you'd find your way back." "Mrs. Gable," Elias hesitated. Clara's name caught in his throat. The housekeeper's expression subtly changed. "Ah, so you already know about little Leo." The name hit Elias like a punch to the gut. Leo. His son had a name, an identity he was unaware of. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Mrs. Gable set down her gardening tools, looking at him with a mix of compassion and reproach. "Your grandmother tried, Elias. All those calls you never returned. She wanted to tell you." The words hit him like successive waves of guilt. How many times had he ignored Eleanor's attempts to contact him, convinced they were just attempts to lure him back to the town he resented so much? "Clara tried to find you too," Mrs. Gable continued, "in the first few months. But you changed all your contacts. You completely disappeared." The memory of those days assaulted him again. The devastating argument, the harsh words exchanged, his impulsive departure for New York. He had blocked Clara's number, changed his email, severed every possible tie, convinced that this way he could erase the pain. "She was pregnant when I left," he murmured, more to himself than to Mrs. Gable, "and she didn't know it yet," the housekeeper added, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. She found out 2 weeks later. Eleanor helped her throughout the pregnancy. She became a grandmother to Leo, too. Elias slumped heavily onto the garden bench, his legs no longer supporting the weight of the revelations. His grandmother, always so wise, had taken care of his son when he was too busy building empires. A noise at the fence caught his attention. Leo was there, peering curiously through the wooden slats. For a moment, their eyes met. The same intense green eyes, the same childish curiosity that he recognized in himself. "Leo!" Clara's voice sounded, alarmed, and the boy quickly disappeared. Elias got up impulsively, but Mrs. Gable stopped him by the arm. "Give her time, son. You can't just burst into their lives after 6 years." "But he's my son," he protested, his voice breaking with emotion, and for 5 years, he was only hers. Clara raised him alone, built a life, protected that boy from any pain your absence might cause him. You're going to have to prove that you deserve a place in their lives. The weight of that truth hit him with full force. His meticulously planned life in New York now seemed like a house of cards about to collapse. And surprisingly, that prospect didn't scare him as much as it should have. For the first time in 6 years, Elias Thorne knew exactly where he needed to be. The next morning brought a renewed determination. Elias woke up before dawn and, dressed in running gear, something he hadn't done in years, decided to jog the streets of Willow Creek. He needed to think, and movement had always helped clear his mind. His steps unconsciously led him to Oak Street, where Clara lived. The modest 2-story Victorian house, painted a soft sky blue, was silent at that hour, an oasis of calm. A red children's bicycle lay on the front lawn, along with some scattered toys, unmistakable signs of Leo's presence. "Looking for something, Mr. Thorne?" A grave voice startled him. Chief Robert Jensen, the former police chief and Clara's father, stood on his porch, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. His eyes, once always friendly, now conveyed a calculated coldness. "Chief Jensen, Chief Jensen to you," the older man interrupted in a glacial voice. "You lost that right a long time ago." Elias swallowed. Chief Robert had been like a father to him during his years with Clara. Now, the resentment in his voice was palpable, an insurmountable wall. "I need to talk to her." "No, you don't," Chief Robert replied, coming down the porch steps, his posture firm. "What you need is to go back to your life in New York and leave my daughter and my grandson alone." "He's my son too," Elias protested, his voice tinged with desperation. "Son?" Chief Robert let out a humorless laugh. "A father doesn't abandon his family, Thorne. A father doesn't disappear for 6 years without a trace." "I didn't know," Elias burst out, his voice echoing down the quiet street. "How could I know if no one told me?" "Keep your voice down," Chief Robert hissed, looking worriedly toward Clara's house. "Come with me." They walked in silence to the corner bistro cafe on the corner, which had just opened its doors. The aroma of fresh bread and brewed coffee filled the air, a comforting contrast to the tension between them. "Do you know why Clara could never tell you?" Chief Robert began, after they had sat down at a secluded table. "Because that last night you said something that completely shattered her." Elias frowned, trying to recall the fog of his anger. "I don't want children. I never have. This small town, this quiet life, it all suffocates me. I need more. I deserve more." Chief Robert quoted, word for word. "That's what you screamed before you left." The memory hit Elias like a slap. The argument had been brutal, born of his frustration at Clara's refusal to move to New York with him, of his fear of being trapped in a life he considered small and limited. "I was angry," he murmured, more to himself than to Chief Robert. "I was young and immature, and she was pregnant without knowing it. When she found out 2 weeks later, how was she supposed to tell you? You had made your feelings about children and small-town life very clear." Elias felt the weight of his guilt multiply exponentially. "But she could have tried." "She did try," Chief Robert interrupted. "She called dozens of times, sent emails, letters. Everything came back. You had surrounded yourself with so many walls that you became unreachable." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the murmur of the first conversations in the cafe. Through the window, Elias watched the town slowly wake up. "Leo," he began hesitantly. "What is he like?" Something softened in Chief Robert's gaze. "Bright, curious. He has your intelligence and his mother's kind heart. He loves books like Clara, but he's also fascinated by the business world. Last week, he set up a lemonade stand and created a loyalty system for his customers." Elias couldn't help but smile with pride, a smile that was almost painful in its bitterness. "Seriously? Does he ask about me?" Clara told him his father was a businessman who traveled the world, Chief Robert explained. She didn't want him to feel abandoned. She preferred to create a story that protected him from the pain. "I need to fix this," Elias declared, his voice firm, with a new resolution. "I need to be part of his life." "And your fiancée in New York?" Chief Robert asked, surprising Elias. "Yes, news travels fast in Willow Creek. How does she fit into those plans?" Before he could answer, his phone vibrated. It was Isabel again. "Elias, I've booked a flight to Willow Creek. I arrive tomorrow. We need to resolve this situation together." Panic settled in his chest. Two worlds that should never have met were about to collide explosively. "You have a lot to sort out, Thorne," Chief Robert said, standing up. "But I'll tell you one thing. If you hurt Clara or Leo again, there's no place in this world where you can hide from me." Elias remained in the cafe long after Chief Robert had left, watching the town come to life. Through the window, he saw Clara and Leo passing by on their way to school. The boy was happily skipping, holding his mother's hand, telling her something that made her laugh. His heart ached. In less than 24 hours, Isabel would be there, bringing with her all the complications of his New York life. But looking at his son, his Leo, Elias knew that some choices were already made, even if he didn't yet have the courage to admit it. He picked up his phone and, for the first time in days, replied to Isabel's message. "Don't come. There's something I need to tell you, and I need to do it in person when I return." The response was immediate. "What are you talking about? What is going on?" Elias watched Clara and Leo disappear around the corner before replying. The truth. The municipal library of Willow Creek, with its red brick walls and arched windows, remained exactly as Elias remembered it. After 3 days of discreetly observing Clara and Leo's routine, he discovered that on Wednesdays, She still coordinated the children's reading program, hidden among the packed shelves. Elias watched as Clara led the session. Her gentle voice resonated through the room as she read The Little Prince to a group of children sitting on colored cushions. Leo was among them, his green eyes sparkling with fascination at every turning page. "And what is the most important part of the book?" Clara asked the group. "What is invisible to the eye?" Leo answered without hesitation, making Elias's heart leap. "It is only with the heart that one can see clearly." Clara smiled proudly, affectionately ruffling her son's hair. "Exactly, my love." After the session, while the other children left with their parents, Leo stayed behind, curiously flipping through other books. Elias took a deep breath and, gathering all his courage, approached the children's section. "That's an excellent book," he commented, pointing to the volume Leo was holding. "A story about dinosaurs." The boy looked up, curiosity evident on his small face. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I loved them when I was your age," Elias replied, his heart beating wildly. "The Tyrannosaurus Rex was my favorite." "Mine too," Leo exclaimed excitedly. "But Mom says the Triceratops was cooler because it was an herbivore and didn't hurt anyone." Clara appeared at that moment, her eyes widening as she saw Elias. "Leo, it's time to go," she called tensely, her voice a whisper that didn't hide her alarm. "But Mom, I was talking about dinosaurs with—" "Now!" Clara's voice left no room for doubt. The boy reluctantly stood up, returning the book to the shelf. "Bye, dinosaur mister," he said, waving shyly before running toward his mother. Clara waited for Leo to be busy packing his things before approaching Elias. Her voice, a furious, barely audible whisper. "What do you think you're doing? We need to talk, Clara." "No, we don't. You lost that right a long time ago." "Please," he pleaded, dropping his guard for the first time, showing vulnerability. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Something in his vulnerability must have touched Clara, because after a moment of hesitation, she nodded. "Tomorrow at noon at the corner bistro. Leo will be at school." The next morning, Elias arrived half an hour early at the cafe. He ordered a black coffee and mentally rehearsed everything he needed to say. Isabel had flooded his inbox with worried messages, but he still couldn't find the right words to explain the situation. Clara arrived punctually, dressed in a simple floral dress and carrying a document folder. She sat down silently, her eyes avoiding contact with his. "I brought something you need to see," she said, opening the folder and sliding some papers across the table. Leo's birth certificate. "DNA tests aren't necessary, just look." "Clara, Don't call me that," she interrupted sharply. "I just want to be clear. I'm not after your money. I don't need it. I've built a good life for Leo and he's happy." Elias examined the documents, his eyes stopping at his son's full name. Leo Robert Jensen. His surname wasn't there. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked, his voice betraying the pain he felt. Clara laughed humorlessly, a bitter, sad laugh. "You said you didn't want children, that you needed more than a small life in Willow Creek, and then you disappeared. Blocked all contact. How was I supposed to?" Her voice faltered, and Elias saw tears forming in her eyes, her emotional barriers yielding. "I'm sorry," he whispered, with more sincerity than he could express. "More than I can express." "Being sorry doesn't change the past," Clara replied, regaining her composure, her voice now firmer. "What do you want now, Elias?" "I want to know my son. I want to be part of his life. And your fiancé in New York, your company, your perfect life far from here." Elias hesitated, the truth coming to light. "I broke up with Isabel last night. By phone. I know it wasn't the best way, but..." Clara stared at him, her eyes filled with surprise. "What?" "I realized I have other priorities now," Elias continued, the decision etched in his voice. "The company. I can run it from anywhere. I've already started looking for houses here in Willow Creek." "You can't just..." "I can, and I will," he interrupted, his voice firm and resolute. "I've lost 5 years of my son's life. I won't lose another day." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with unspoken emotions. Clara nervously fiddled with her napkin, clearly processing the information. The magnitude of Elias's statement. "He asked about you yesterday," she finally said, her voice a barely audible whisper. "About the dinosaur mister. He said your eyes were just like his, Elias felt his heart clench, a knot of emotion in his throat. "What did you tell him?" "That sometimes people have similar eyes." Clara sighed, the burden of her lie visible. "But I don't know how long I can keep that up. He's very smart, very observant." "Then let me be part of his life," Elias pleaded, reaching a hand toward her. "We can go slow, at your pace, but please, give me a chance." Clara studied him with a longing gaze, a mixture of hope and caution before answering. "He has a baseball game tomorrow after school, at 3, if you want to come." Elias nodded, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in days. It was a small step, but it was a beginning. As Clara stood to leave, he called her one last time. "Clara, thank you." She paused for a moment, her back to him. "Don't make me regret this, Elias. I can't watch him suffer again." As he watched her walk away, Elias made a silent promise to himself and his son. This time, he would get everything right. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifices, Leo and Clara would be his priority. His phone buzzed with a message from his assistant in New York. "Board meeting scheduled to discuss your prolonged absence. They require your immediate presence." Elias deleted the message without hesitation. Some choices, after all, were easier than they seemed. The baseball field at Willow Creek Elementary School buzzed with the energy of dozens of uniformed children and enthusiastic parents. Elias, dressed in jeans and a casual polo shirt, a conscious change from his usual Italian suit, stood discreetly in the farthest stands, trying to blend in. Leo, sporting the number 7, warmed up with his teammates. Even from a distance, Elias could see the determination on his son's face, the way he focused on every throw, just as Elias himself had done at that same age. "He's the starting pitcher," a familiar voice sounded beside him. Clara sat down, maintaining a calculated distance, the scent of flowers and soap that always accompanied her. "Best strike average in the minors." The pride in her voice was evident, and Elias felt a pang of regret for all the achievements he had missed. "How did he start playing?" he asked softly, his voice barely a whisper. Clara hesitated before replying. "It was his grandma Eleanor's idea, actually. Eleanor came to every game. She said baseball was in the Thorne blood." The mention of his grandmother brought a new wave of guilt. How many games had she attended in his place? How many stories about Leo had she tried to share in the phone calls he never answered? The game began, and Elias watched, fascinated, as his son performed on the pitcher's mound. His posture, his concentration, even the way he adjusted his cap, were gestures that seemed to reflect his own childhood memories. "Strike!" the umpire shouted for the 3rd time, and Leo celebrated quietly, as if trying to contain his joy. "He always does that," Clara commented, a gentle smile on her lips. "He says he doesn't want the other kids to feel bad." "You've done an incredible job with him," Elias murmured, his voice tinged with emotion, with an astonishment he couldn't hide. Before Clara could reply, a murmur ran through the stands. Isabel, in her impeccable designer outfit and high heels totally inappropriate for a baseball field, was walking decisively toward them, a tempest in the shape of a woman. "Elias Thorne!" Her voice cut the air like a sharp blade, drawing everyone's attention. 3 days without returning my calls, a breakup over the phone, and now I find you watching baseball in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The game practically stopped. All attention focused on the unfolding scene. Leo, on the pitcher's mound, watched curiously, his small figure a focal point in the drama. Clara stood up abruptly, fear in her eyes. "I'm going for a drink," she murmured, clearly uncomfortable. "No." Elias gently held her wrist, his touch firm and protective. Turning to Isabel, He spoke with a firmness that surprised everyone, including himself. "We need to talk, but not here, not now." "Not here? Not now?" Isabel laughed with disbelief, a bitter, painful laugh. "You cancel our wedding by phone and you think you can— Is that your son?" She interrupted her own speech, her eyes fixed on Leo, who was still watching them from the field. The resemblance to Elias was undeniable, a visual shock that cut the air. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara instinctively took a step forward, as if to protect Leo, even from a distance. "Yes," Elias simply replied, his voice loaded with undeniable truth. "He is my son." Isabel staggered as if she'd been slapped, her face paling. "How long did you know?" "I found out 4 days ago." "And you've already chosen?" Isabel's voice trembled, incredulity and pain mixed. "You've chosen this? This small life over everything we've built?" "It's not a choice, Isabel," Elias responded softly, with a serenity he had never felt before, even in a New York boardroom. "It's a course correction, something I should have done a long time ago." Tears ran down Isabel's perfectly made-up face. "You'll regret it, Elias, when the novelty wears off, when you realize everything you're throwing away." "No," he interrupted, his voice firm and absolute. "My only regret is that it took me so long to understand what truly matters." Isabel took one last look at Leo, then at Clara, and finally at Elias. Without another word, she turned on her heels and left, leaving only the echo of her steps in the tense silence. The game slowly resumed, but Leo seemed to have lost some of his concentration. His next pitch was a ball, rare by his standards. "He noticed," Clara whispered, the tension of the confrontation still visible on her face. "The similarity, the argument. He's not stupid, Elias." As if to confirm her words, Leo looked directly at them between pitches, his green eyes, the thorn eyes, filled with unasked questions. "I need to tell him," Clara decided, her voice trembling slightly. "Tonight. I can't let him find out from other people." Elias felt his heart race. "Do you want me to—" "No," she cut him off. "Let me do it. He needs to hear it from me first, then we'll see." The rest of the game passed in a fog. Leo recovered enough to secure the win for his team, but his celebration was restrained, his eyes constantly returning to the stands where Elias was. When the game ended, Clara stood up. "I'm going to get him. Please don't try, not today. He'll need time to process everything." Elias nodded, his heart torn between the desire to rush to his son and the realization that he needed to respect Leo's time. "Clara!" he called out as she walked away. Tell him I'm proud of him, of today's game, of who he is, of everything." She paused for a moment, and Elias swore he saw tears in her eyes before she turned and continued toward her son. That night, alone in his grandmother's mansion, Elias found a photo album Eleanor kept hidden in her desk. Page after page of moments from Leo's life. His first day of school, birthdays, baseball games, moments his grandmother had treasured, waiting for the day he was finally ready to see them. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he murmured into the silence of the house, feeling the presence of his grandmother, that wise, strong woman, surrounding him with her unconditional love. "But I promise I'm going to fix everything." His phone buzzed. New York office again. This time, he didn't even bother to look at the message. Some priorities, after all, were crystal clear. What would you sacrifice if you found out you had a child after all these years? Your career? Your perfect life? Comment below with your honest opinion. The breakfast of truth, the night after the baseball game, stretched on like an eternity. Elias stayed awake, imagining the conversation between Clara and Leo, visualizing the expressions, the questions, the possible tears. When the sun finally rose, his phone vibrated with a message from Clara. "He wants to see you. Breakfast at the Corner Bistro, a Willow Creek classic." The Corner Bistro was an institution in Willow Creek, the same place he and Clara used to grab milkshakes after school. Now, 15 years later, Elias found himself sitting at one of the Formica tables, his hands trembling slightly as he waited. The door chimes rang, and Leo walked in, clutching Clara's hand tightly. His eyes, identical to his father's, were slightly red-rimmed, a sign of a bad night's sleep. "Good morning," Clara said softly, guiding Leo to the table. The boy sat across from Elias, studying him with surprising intensity for someone so young. The silence that followed was deafening, filling the space between the aroma of pancakes and fresh coffee. "Are you really my dad?" Leo finally asked, his voice small but firm, breaking the tension. Elias swallowed, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Yes, I am. Why didn't you come to see me before?" The question hit Elias like a punch to the stomach. Clara visibly tensed beside him, but remained silent, giving him space to tell the truth. "Because I made a very, very big mistake," Elias replied with brutal honesty. I didn't know about you, but that's no excuse. I should have been here." Leo frowned, processing the information with the seriousness of a little philosopher. "Grandma Eleanor sometimes talked about you. She said you built very tall buildings in New York." "Yes, that's true." Elias smiled sadly. "Your grandmother, she was a very special woman. She came to all my games," Leo continued. "She said I played just like you did when you were little." The waitress approached, momentarily breaking the tension. Leo ordered chocolate chip pancakes, exactly what Elias used to order as a child, a detail that made the father's heart swell. "Mom says you're going to stay in Willow Creek now," the boy commented, playing with his napkin. "If you want me to," Elias replied softly. "I would love to get to know you better, Leo, to be part of your life." "It's Liam," the boy corrected. "Everyone calls me Liam, except when I'm bad. Then Mom uses my full name." Self-correction. "I will use Liam instead of Leo from now on," as the boy corrected the name. Clara laughed softly, the first sign of relaxation that morning. The breakfast passed slowly, with Liam asking occasional questions about New York, baseball, and Elias's life. It was surprising how, even after years apart, they shared so many tastes and gestures. The moment was interrupted by Elias's phone. Another call from New York. This time, it was Frederick Solar, the board chairman. "I'm sorry," Elias murmured, declining the call. "Is that your job?" Liam asked, curiously. "Yes, but it's not important now." Clara looked at him skeptically, her eyebrow arched in doubt. "Elias, if you need—" "No," he interrupted firmly. "This is more important." Just then, the restaurant phone rang again and again and again. "Mr. Thorne?" The waitress approached with a landline phone. "There's an urgent call for you from Thorne Group." Elias sighed, frustrated by the constant interruption. "Excuse me," he said, getting up. In the restaurant hallway, Frederick Solar wasted no time on formalities. "The board meets in an hour. We're losing the contract with the Peralta Group because of your absence. Millions at stake, Thorne. Either you return to New York today, or we start voting for your replacement." Elias looked through the kitchen door, seeing Liam laughing at something Clara had said. His son, his family. "Then vote," he replied simply, hanging up the phone. When he returned to the table, Liam looked at him curiously. "You look worried." "It's nothing," Elias smiled, sitting down again. "Hey, how about we go to the baseball field after school today? We can practice some throws." The boy's face lit up. "Can I, Mom?" Clara hesitated for a moment, her eyes meeting Elias's. "Of course, honey, but only until 6. You have homework." The rest of the breakfast flowed more naturally. When it was time for Liam to leave for school, he surprised Elias with a quick, shy hug before running off toward the car. "It's incredible," Elias murmured, watching them drive away. His phone vibrated once more. A message from the board. "Vote completed. Replacement approved. Your attorneys will be contacted." Elias put away the phone, a serene smile on his face. The company that had taken him years to build. The empire that meant so much. It all seemed insignificant compared to the hug he had just received. That afternoon, while teaching Liam the secrets of the perfect pitch, Elias Thorne finally understood what his grandmother had been trying to tell him all those years. Some fortunes are not measured in dollars. "Dad," Liam called out, trying the word for the first time, his voice sweet and natural. "Show me that throw again." And in that moment, Elias knew he had made the right choice. Eleanor's hidden legacy news of the fall of the Thorne Empire spread quickly through Willow Creek. The local newspaper headlined, "Local Tycoon Loses Control of Multi-Billion-Dollar Company," and whispers followed Elias wherever he went. But none of it mattered compared to the afternoons on the baseball field with Liam. 2 weeks had passed since the breakfast at the corner bistro, and a routine was beginning to establish itself. Elias attended Liam's games, helped him with his math homework, his favorite subject, and gradually built a relationship with his son. That particular morning, while organizing documents in his grandmother's study, Elias found an old box carefully sealed with Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "I thought you'd never find this," Mrs. Gable commented from the doorway, carrying a tea tray. "Your grandmother prepared it in the last months of her life." Elias carefully opened the box. Inside, he found letters, dozens of them, all addressed to him, but never sent. The first was dated 6 years ago. "My dear Elias, I met your son today. Clara was scared and alone, but Liam is the most extraordinary boy I have ever seen. He has your eyes, your smile, and that same determination you've always shown. Please, I beg you, come home. There is so much you need to know." Tears began to blur his vision as he read letter after letter, each detailing precious moments of Liam's life that he had missed. "Mr. Thorne," Sarah, his former assistant, interrupted his thoughts via phone. "Frederick Solar is here." Elias straightened up, surprised. Frederick, the board chairman, entered the study, his impeccable suit contrasting with the simplicity of the surroundings. "We need to talk, Elias." Mrs. Gable discreetly withdrew, closing the door behind her. "If you've come to try to persuade me to return, I've come to show you this," Frederick interrupted, throwing a folder onto the table. "Your grandmother wasn't just a shareholder in the Thorne Group. She was the largest individual shareholder." Elias picked up the documents, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Eleanor Thorne kept her stake secret for years, through a series of shell companies. Upon her death, those shares passed to you. The board cannot remove you. You are the majority owner of the company." The revelation struck Elias like thunder. His grandmother, always so astute, had protected his future even when he ignored her. "Why are you telling me this now?" Frederick sighed, sitting down. "Because Eleanor made me promise. She said one day you would understand that there are things more important than business. And when that day came, I had to make sure you didn't lose everything for making the right choice." Just then, Clara appeared in the study doorway, and agitated. "Elias, we need to talk, now." Something in her voice made Elias stand up immediately. "Frederick, can we continue this later?" In the back garden, Clara was pacing back and forth, visibly upset. "Liam found some old letters in the attic. Letters I wrote to you during the pregnancy." Elias's heart skipped a beat. "What did they say?" "The truth," Clara replied, her voice trembling. "That I tried to tell you about the pregnancy. That I went to New York to find you." "And what, Clara?" "That I saw you there!" she burst out, tears streaming down her face. "With Isabel. You looked so happy, so perfect. I was 4 months pregnant, using all the money I had to find you. And when I finally did, you were engaged to her." The memory hit Elias like a slap. The engagement party on the terrace of the Phoenix Hotel, 5.5 years ago. He had just met Isabel, but the event had already been organized to consolidate his image. "Why did you never tell me that?" "Because you seemed to have moved on," Clara cried. "Because I didn't want to be the small-town girl who ruined your perfect life. Because you still loved me," Elias finished softly. The silence that followed was deafening. Liam read the letters, Clara continued, wiping her tears. He knows everything now, about how we met, how we fell in love, how we broke up, how I decided not to tell you about him. Where is he? At the baseball field. He said he needed to think. Elias didn't hesitate. I'm going to talk to him. Elias! Clara called out as he headed for the car. He found this too. She handed him a small velvet box. Inside was the engagement ring he had bought for her 15 years ago, the week before their big fight. You kept it. Some things are hard to let go of, she murmured. At the baseball field, Liam was sitting alone in the stands, a pile of yellowed letters beside him. Can I sit down? Elias asked softly. The boy shrugged, but moved over to make room. Did you love Mom? Liam asked after a long silence, his voice barely a whisper. More than anything, Elias replied honestly. And now? Elias looked at his son, so young and yet so perceptive. Now I understand that some loves never truly leave. They just wait for the right time to come back. Liam picked up one of the letters. Mom wrote that you were the love of her life, that she hoped I would have your smile and your heart. And you do. Elias smiled sadly. You have the best of both of us. Are you going to leave again? Never, Elias replied firmly. Not even if every skyscraper in New York depended on it. Liam leaned in, resting his head on his father's shoulder. Promise. I promise, Elias whispered, hugging his son, his heart beating in sync with the little one's. Some choices, once made, are forever. As the sun set over the baseball field, father and son sat in silence, the letters between them telling a story of love, loss, and redemption that was just beginning its next chapter, rebuilding the family kingdom. The revelation of the letters changed everything. The days that followed brought a new dynamic between Elias, Clara, and Liam, as if a veil of secrets had finally been lifted. It was a Saturday morning when Elias decided to take the next step toward rebuilding. How about a picnic? He suggested during breakfast at Clara's house, something that had become a weekend ritual. At Emerald Lake? Clara stopped serving pancakes, her hands trembling slightly. Emerald Lake had been their spot, where they shared their first kiss, where they planned their future, where he intended to propose before everything fell apart. Please, Mom, Liam pleaded, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Can we go fishing too? Clara looked at Elias, who maintained a hopeful expression. All right, she finally conceded. But you two are preparing everything. The morning passed in a lively hustle. Liam helped Elias make sandwiches, while Clara organized a basket of fruit and drinks. The domesticity of the scene was not lost on either adult, a harbinger of the life they could have. At the lake, while Liam tried out his new fishing rod, a gift from Elias, Clara sat next to her ex-boyfriend on the plaid blanket. It reminds me of that summer, she commented softly. Before everything, Elias added. We both made mistakes. Clara sighed. I should have fought harder. I should have insisted on telling you about Liam. Elias pulled something from his pocket, the small velvet box Clara had shown him days before. Did you know I was going to propose to you here? That last week before our fight. Clara caught her breath. Elias, no. I need to say it. He interrupted tenderly. I had everything planned. The sunset, the flowers. I even convinced old Peter to play our song on the guitar. But then that proposal from New York came, and I lost my way. Dad! Dad! Liam shouted excitedly. I caught one! The two adults watched as the boy struggled with his first catch. His face, a mixture of concentration and joy that reminded them so much of Elias as a child. He's amazing, Elias murmured. How could I have lost so much time? We're here now, Clara replied. Softly. That's what matters. The day unfolded like a dream. Liam alternated fishing with Elias and joining them on the blanket for a snack, telling stories and asking questions about what his parents were like when they were young. So you met here? He asked, taking a bite of a sandwich. Your mother was reading The Little Prince under that old oak tree. Elias pointed to a centuries-old tree on the lakeshore. I was trying to impress her with my fishing skills, and ended up falling into the water. He came out soaking wet, but still tried to look charming. Clara laughed at the memory. Did it work? Liam asked curiously. More or less, Clara smiled. At least I got a date for hot chocolate. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Liam fell asleep on the blanket, exhausted after a day of adventures. He looked so peaceful, Clara commented, smoothing a lock of her son's hair. Elias took a deep breath, gathering his courage. Clara, I know it might be too soon, that there's a lot to rebuild, but... He opened the velvet box, revealing the ring. I'm not asking for anything now. I just want you to know that I never stopped loving you. And if one day... Elias, Clara interrupted, tears welling up in her eyes. There's so much between us, so much history, so much pain and so much love, he added. Look at him, Clara. Look at our family. Can we give ourselves this chance again? Before Clara could answer, Liam stirred in his sleep, muttering something about flying fish. The two laughed softly, the moment of tension broken by their son's innocence. One day at a time, Clara finally replied, her hand finding Elias's on the blanket. Let's rebuild this right, for our family. Elias nodded, putting the ring away, but keeping their hands intertwined. The sun continued its descent over Emerald Lake, a silent witness to another chapter in their story. On the way back, Liam woke up briefly in the back seat of the car. That was the best day of my life, he mumbled sleepily. Clara and Elias exchanged a look through the rearview mirror, a silent understanding passing between them. Some bridges, once rebuilt, become stronger than they were originally. That night, after dropping off Clara and Liam at home, Elias drove to his grandmother's mansion. In the study, he found another letter from Eleanor, as if she knew exactly what was about to happen. My dear Elias, true love is patient. It waits, forgives, and rebuilds. By the time you read this, I hope you have understood that some fortunes are not measured in dollars, and that the best investments are the ones we make in family. With love, Grandma Eleanor. Elias fell asleep with the letter on his chest, dreaming of future picnics, baseball games, and a family that was finally complete. The return to the legacy and the test of fire. Autumn settled over Willow Creek, bringing with it an explosion of color and change. The trees on the Thorne estate painted themselves in shades of red and gold, while inside the mansion, Elias faced his own transformation. Sitting in his grandmother's study, he analyzed the latest proposal from the Thorne Group Board of Directors, an offer to buy his shares for an astronomical sum, on the condition that he completely relinquish control of the company. The documents only need your signature, Frederick Solar explained via video call. It's a generous offer, Elias. More money than you could spend in several lifetimes. Elias turned his chair toward the window, watching Liam play in the garden with his new dog, a golden retriever that Clara had agreed to after weeks of joint begging from father and son. What if I don't want to sell? He asked, his mind already formulating a different plan. Frederick sighed, clearly impatient. Then you'll have to actively assume the presidency. The board won't accept an absent CEO anymore. And what if I could run it from Willow Creek, a company the size of Thorne Group, run from a small town? Frederick laughed humorlessly. The board would never accept it. The board has no choice, Elias replied firmly. I'm the majority shareholder, remember? Just then, Clara appeared in the study doorway, carrying an antique box. Her face was pale. Frederick, I have to call you back. Elias quickly ended the video conference. Clara, what's wrong? She placed the box on the table, another of Eleanor's treasured possessions. I found this in the attic. I think you need to see it. Inside the box were old documents, yellowed photos, and a diary. The photos showed Elias's father, Richard Thorne, as a young man, alongside a man Elias recognized as Chief Robert Jensen. Our fathers were partners, Clara explained, her voice trembling slightly. Before the accident, before your father died, they were building something together. Thorne Group didn't start in New York. Elias. It started right here, in Willow Creek. Elias flipped through his father's diary, discovering a story he had never known. Thorne Group had been born as a small construction business, founded by Richard Thorne and Robert Jensen Sr. When Richard died in a car accident, Clara's father was forced to sell his share for a pittance to pay by Colette. "My God," Elias murmured, the pieces fitting together. "That's why your family always resented us so much. That's why my father never approved of our relationship," Clara added. "He believed the Thornes had stolen our family's future." Liam chose that moment to burst into the study, his dog Max on his heels. "Dad, Mom, look what Max has learned to do." The two adults watched as the boy proudly demonstrated how he had taught the dog to shake hands, their worries momentarily forgotten in the joys of their son. After Liam left, Elias made a decision. "I'm going to fix this," he declared. "Elias, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted tenderly. "Not just for the past, but for the future, for our future." Over the next few weeks, Elias worked tirelessly on a new plan for Thorne Group. He transformed his grandmother's study into an operations center, installing state-of-the-art technology that allowed video conferences with offices around the world. But his true masterpiece was the project he presented to the board: the construction of a new technological hub in Willow Creek, which would be the company's new headquarters. "Returning to our roots," he explained during the presentation. The most significant part of the project, however, was revealed at a dinner at the Jensen house. "I want to offer you an equal partnership in the company," Elias announced to Clara and her father, Chief Robert. "Not as charity or compensation, but as recognition of what it should have always been." Chief Robert Jensen looked long and hard at the man he had once despised. "Why?" "Because some debts need to be paid," Elias replied. "And because I want my son to grow up knowing we did the right thing." Liam, who was playing with Max in the garden, was unaware of the monumental changes happening inside the house. But when his grandpa Jensen hugged him later that night, with tears in the old man's eyes, he felt that something important had happened. That night, after putting Liam to bed, Clara found Elias on the balcony. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes, I did," he replied, pulling her close. "For us, for our family." The engagement ring was still in his desk drawer, waiting for the right moment. But there, under the stars of Willow Creek, with the sound of his son's breathing drifting through the open window, Elias Thorne finally understood the true meaning of legacy. It wasn't about corporate empires or bank accounts. It was about doing the right thing, even if it was late. It was about building something his son could be proud of one day. The storm and the vow. Winter arrived in Willow Creek with unexpected ferocity. A blizzard was approaching the town, and with it, winds of change that no one could predict. Elias was in the middle of a crucial video conference about the company's transition when his phone vibrated with an urgent message from Clara. "Liam has a high fever. Hospital, come." Without hesitation, he ended the meeting and rushed to his car, ignoring the snow that was beginning to fall. At the hospital, he found Clara in the emergency room, her face etched with worry. "Pneumonia," she explained, her voice trembling. "He was playing in the snow yesterday and—" "Mr. and Mrs. Thorne," a nurse called out, making Clara blush, and Elias feel a lump in his chest at the title that wasn't yet official. "Jensen," Clara corrected softly. "I'm Ms. Jensen." The doctor explained that Liam would need to be hospitalized. The pneumonia was severe and required intensive care. As they watched their son sleep, connected to monitors and oxygen tubes, Elias felt a fear he had never experienced before. "He'll be all right," Clara murmured, more to herself than to him. "He has to be." The storm worsened overnight, isolating Willow Creek from the rest of the world. The hospital was running on generators, and the roads were impassable. It was then that the doctor brought more worrying news. "Liam needs specific medication," he explained. "But with the storm, our supplies are low." "Where can we find more?" Elias asked immediately. "The Central Hospital in Burlington has it. But with these conditions—" "I'll go," Elias declared, already reaching for his keys. "Elias, no!" Clara grabbed his arm. "It's suicide to drive in this storm." "He's our son," he replied simply. The look they exchanged said everything. Years of pain and resentment dissolved in that moment, replaced by something deeper, more fundamental. "Then I'll go with you," Clara decided. "No." Elias touched her cheek tenderly. "Liam needs you here. I promise I'll be back." Before leaving, Elias stopped by his son's room. Liam slept restlessly. His breathing labored even with the help of oxygen. "Dad?" he mumbled sleepily, his green eyes clouded with fever. "I'm here, champ." Elias held his small hand. "I'm going to get your medicine, okay? Be strong." "Like a thorn?" Liam asked with a small smile. "Like a Jensen thorn," Elias corrected, kissing his warm forehead. The drive to Burlington was a nightmare. The snow made visibility almost zero, and several times Elias almost lost control of the car. But the image of his sick son kept him going. At the Burlington hospital, after what seemed like an eternity, Elias finally got the medicine. The return journey, however, proved even more challenging. A fallen tree blocked the main road. With no alternative, he had to take a detour along the old mountain road, the same one where his father had suffered the fatal accident years ago. That's when it happened. A deer darted out of nowhere, causing Elias to swerve sharply. The car skidded on the snow, spinning dangerously close to the cliff. For a terrible moment, he thought history would repeat itself. But something, perhaps his father's spirit, perhaps his love for his son, made him keep control. The car stopped inches from the abyss. When he finally arrived at the Willow Creek Hospital, hours had passed. Clara was waiting for him in the lobby, frozen tears on her face. "Thank God," she whispered, hugging him tightly. I thought I had lost you too." "Never again," Elias promised, handing the medicine to the doctors. The next few hours were an agonizing wait, but slowly Liam began to respond to the treatment. His fever dropped, and his breathing improved. The next morning, as the sun finally broke through the clouds, Elias watched his son sleep peacefully, with Clara asleep in the chair beside him. It was then he realized he had faced his greatest fear that night. It wasn't the storm, or even the road that had claimed his father. It was the fear of losing his family again. He took the engagement ring from his pocket. He had carried it with him constantly since the day at the lake. This time, there was no doubt, no hesitation. When Clara woke up, she found the ring on her finger, and Elias kneeling beside her. "Marry me," he said simply. "Not because we have to, not because it's the right thing to do, but because I want to spend every storm of my life by your side." Liam chose that moment to open his eyes, smiling faintly at the sight. "It's about time," he murmured, making his parents laugh through their tears. The storm had passed, leaving behind not only a snow-covered town, but also a family stronger, more united than ever. A legacy built with love. Spring came to Willow Creek, bringing not only the blossoming of flowers, but also a wave of change. Jensen Thorne Technologies, as the company was now called, began constructing its new headquarters in the center of town, transforming an abandoned lot into a symbol of renewal. Clara and Elias had decided to hold a simple wedding in June at Emerald Lake, but before that, there was an even more important ceremony to perform. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Clara asked, adjusting Liam's tie. They were at the county courthouse, waiting for the adoption hearing. After months of legal procedures, Elias could finally formalize what his heart already knew. Liam was his son. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life," Elias replied, watching Liam practice his signature on a piece of paper. The boy had insisted on signing his new full name, Liam Robert Jensen Thorne. Judge Morales, a gray-haired woman who had known Clara since she was a child, conducted the ceremony with a warm smile. "Liam," she addressed the boy, "do you understand what this adoption means?" "It means I officially have a dad," Liam replied with a seriousness that surpassed his years. "But really, he's been my dad for a long time." The simplicity and depth of the answer moved everyone in the room. Elias held Clara's hand, feeling the engagement ring on her finger. After the ceremony, they went to celebrate at the corner bistro. Liam was savoring his chocolate milkshake when he asked the question that caught everyone by surprise. "Can I have a little brother now?" Clara choked on her coffee, while Elias tried to hide a smile. "One step at a time, champ," he replied, exchanging a meaningful look with his fiancée. Later that day, while Liam showed his new documents to his grandpa Jensen, Elias took Clara for a walk. They stopped in front of a Victorian house on Oak Street, the same one Clara had always admired when they were teenagers. "What do you think?" he asked, handing her a set of keys. Clara looked from the house to the keys, her eyes wide. "Elias, no! I thought we needed a place of our own," he explained. "A place where our family can grow." The tears in Clara's eyes said everything words couldn't express. "And there's one more thing," Elias continued, leading her to the backyard. There, partially built, was a treehouse. "Liam and I started building it over the weekend," he explained. "He said every family's backyard needs one." Clara observed the details of the project: the small windows, the rope ladder, the perfect space for children's adventures. "You're building more than a treehouse," she commented softly. "You're building memories." "We are," Elias corrected, hugging her from behind. "Now we build everything together." The sound of laughter interrupted the moment. Liam came running down the street, followed by his grandpa Jensen, who was carrying blueprints. "Dad, Grandpa has an awesome idea for the treehouse," Liam exclaimed excitedly. "We can make a pulley system to bring things up." Chief Robert Jensen, who had gradually accepted Elias as part of the family, held out the drawings. "I thought we could work on it together," he offered. "After all, building things has always been a tradition in our families." Elias felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just a treehouse. It was about healing old wounds, about building bridges between the past and the future. "It would be an honor," he replied, extending his hand to his future father-in-law. As the men discussed the project details, Clara watched the scene with a full heart. Liam, sitting on the makeshift swing Elias had hung, was drawing his own blueprints for the treehouse. "Mom," he called out, "can we paint it blue? It's Dad's favorite color." "Of course, honey," Clara replied, amazed by the naturalness with which her son had embraced all the changes. That night, after a family dinner in the new house, Liam fell asleep on the still unpacked sofa, exhausted from planning his future treehouse improvements. "He looks so happy," Clara commented, covering him with a blanket. "We all are," Elias replied, pulling her into his arms. "You know, I spent years building skyscrapers in New York, but I've never felt as fulfilled as I do today, building a simple treehouse with our son." Clara smiled, understanding perfectly. Because sometimes the most important foundations aren't concrete and steel, but love, forgiveness, and second chances. And there, in that Victorian house on Oak Street, with her son sleeping peacefully and her future husband by her side, Clara knew they had finally found their true home. The grand finale, the wedding and a new beginning. The wedding morning dawned perfect in Willow Creek. Emerald Lake reflected the blue June sky like a mirror, and a gentle breeze swayed the wildflowers decorating the ceremony site. In the Thorne mansion, where Clara was getting ready, the atmosphere was one of joy and excitement. Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, helped with the final touches on the dress, a vintage gown that had belonged to Clara's mother. "Something old," Mrs. Gable smiled, adjusting the veil. "Your mother would be so proud." Liam burst into the room, already dressed in his page boy suit, carrying a small blue box. "Something blue," he announced proudly, handing his mother a delicate bracelet. "Dad and I chose it together." Clara hugged her son, careful not to wrinkle her dress. "You look so handsome, my love, like a true Jensen thorn," she replied with a smile, making everyone laugh. At the lake, Elias waited nervously under the old oak tree where it all began. The place had been transformed into a fairy tale setting, with lanterns hanging from the branches and paths marked with white petals. Frederick Solar, now a close friend, adjusted his tie. "Nervous? For the first time in my life," Elias admitted. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The music began to play. Not a traditional wedding march, but La Vie en Rose on the guitar, played by Old Peter, just as Elias had planned years ago in his first failed marriage proposal. Liam walked in first, carrying the rings with comical seriousness. Then, everyone stood as Clara appeared, escorted by her father. Elias felt his heart stop. Clara was stunning, but it wasn't just her physical beauty that moved him. It was everything she represented. His first love, the mother of his son, his second chance. When Chief Robert handed his daughter's hand to Elias, there were tears in his eyes. "Take care of my treasure," he murmured. "With my life," Elias promised. The ceremony was officiated by Judge Morales, the same one who had presided over Liam's adoption. At a particularly emotional moment, she asked the boy to join his parents. "Today we celebrate not only the union of two people," the judge declared, "but the officialization of a family that love had already built." Liam held his parents' hands as they exchanged vows. "Clara," Elias began, his voice breaking, "I spent years building an empire without realizing that my true treasure was right here. You gave me the greatest gift anyone could receive, our son. And now you are giving me a second chance to get it right. I promise to spend the rest of my life deserving this love." Clara wiped a tear before beginning her vows. "Elias, they say we can't rewrite the past, but we can choose how our story continues. I choose you, today and forever, to write every new chapter together." When it came time for the rings, Liam presented them with a radiant smile. "Something new," he announced, making everyone laugh again. After the "I do," the party continued throughout the afternoon in the garden of the Thorne mansion. Chief Robert surprised everyone with an emotional speech. "When Eleanor Thorne came to me years ago, talking about intertwined destinies and second chances, I confess I had my doubts. But she was right. Some stories need time to find their true ending." During the newlyweds' first dance, to the tune of La Vie en Rose, Liam joined them on the dance floor, turning the waltz into a family embrace. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing to the sky. A double rainbow had formed over the lake, like a natural blessing for the occasion. "Grandma Eleanor used to say that double rainbows are a sign of fulfilled promises," Liam commented, hugging his parents. Later, as the sun began to set, Clara found Elias sitting on the old garden swing, watching Liam play with the other children. $1 for your thoughts," she smiled, taking a seat beside him. "I was thinking how funny life is," he replied, pulling her close. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what truly matters." "And what truly matters?" she asked, although she already knew the answer. "This," he replied simply, gesturing to Liam, to her, to their reunited family. "It always has been." Night fell over Willow Creek, the garden lanterns creating a magical setting. Liam fell asleep in Grandpa Jensen's arms, exhausted but happy. Clara and Elias danced again under the stars. Now, as husband and wife, she whispered in his ear, "I have something to tell you." "What?" he asked, noticing the special sparkle in her eyes. "It looks like Liam's wish for a little brother or sister is going to come true sooner than we thought." Elias stopped dancing, his eyes wide. "Are you?" Clara nodded, smiling through her tears of joy. And there, under the starry sky of Willow Creek, with his son, sleeping peacefully, and his wife carrying a new life, Elias Thorne finally understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't the New York skyscrapers or the bank accounts. It was the love he built, brick by brick, the story of his family. If you had to choose between the professional success of your dreams in a big city or a seemingly simpler life with those you love in your hometown, which path would you choose and why? Your participation is very important to the channel. Drop your sincere opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.